It was a typical Monday morning, and I was seated at the kitchen table, finishing my coffee after breakfast. The paper was open in front of me as I flipped to the sports section. That's when my wife, Claire, broke the silence. "David, could you put the newspaper down? I need to talk to you," she said. I set the paper aside and gave her a glance. "I'm leaving you, David. I want a divorce," she said firmly. "Is that all?" I asked, casually picking the newspaper back up and pretending to read. "David, I'm serious," she insisted, her voice rising. I kept my eyes on the page and shrugged. Her frustration bubbled over. "Damn it, David. Put the newspaper down and talk to me about this." I sighed, folded the paper neatly, and looked her in the eyes. "What's there to talk about? Goodbye. Honestly, it's not much of a loss. You've been a lousy wife for over a year, so just go." With that, she stood up and walked to the home office. I grabbed a notebook, pen, and an envelope, then returned to the kitchen. I opened the notebook and scrawled at the top of the page, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank God she's leaving me." As I folded the note, an idea hit me. I pulled out one of the lottery tickets I'd picked up the night before, tucked it into the envelope, and sealed it. On the outside, I wrote, "Maybe if you win, it'll be enough to keep her satisfied, so she doesn't cheat on you too. Good luck, pal. You'll need it." I slid the envelope across the table to Claire. "When you see him, give him this," I said. Her face paled, her mouth hanging open in shock. "What? You knew?" she stammered. I smirked. "Just because you think I'm clueless doesn't mean I am. Actually, on second thought," I snatched the envelope back. "I'll mail it myself. I don't trust you not to open it, read it, and toss it." She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Now, why don't you go pack your things and get out of my life?" Claire crossed her arms. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm not about to move out just so you can bring your girlfriend in." I poured my coffee into a travel mug, grabbed my keys, and headed out. On the way to work, I stopped by the bank. I closed out our savings and checking accounts, emptied the safe deposit box, and opened new accounts under my name at a bank closer to my office. I canceled all our joint credit cards and arranged for replacements issued in my name only. By the time I got to work, I felt like I was finally in control. Later that day, I stayed late, had dinner with my executive assistant, Mia, and casually mentioned, "Well, looks like I'm back on the market. Is your sister still interested?" Mia laughed. "To hell with my sister, David. If you're single again, I want to be first in line." I raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "Absolutely." I chuckled. "All right then. Your sister's bumped to second place." Mia leaned closer. "She doesn't stand a chance. I've been waiting for this." We chatted a while longer, and Mia asked the obvious question. "So, what happened?" I didn't sugarcoat it. "Claire wants a divorce. She's been seeing this guy, Tyler, for about a year and a half. Guess part-time wasn't cutting it anymore." "How long have you known?" "Since it started. A friend saw her going into a motel with him and tipped me off. I hired a private investigator who confirmed everything." "And you just let it go?" "Yep. What was I supposed to do? In this state, it's a no-fault divorce. If I made a big deal out of it, I'd lose half of everything. The house, the garage, my woodworking shop. No thanks. I figured she could stay, keep the house running, and do the laundry while I waited her out." Mia stared at me, wide-eyed. "You lived with her, knowing?" It's amazing how quickly love turns to hate, and hate turns into indifference. Mia shook her head. "I don't get it. How could you go a year and a half without?" "Who said anything about going without?" I interrupted. As long as Claire was offering, I was taking. Sure, the frequency dropped, but I just stopped making love. She laughed softly. "What's next, David?" I smiled wryly. "Wait and see what Claire does now that she's on her own. She'll have to rely on Tyler to fund her lawyer, and I'm curious to see how committed he really is." Mia leaned forward, her tone serious. "David, don't wait for her. File first. Take control." And she was right. I called Alex Advocat when Alex picked up the phone. I wasted no time. "I need your help, Alex. Claire wants a divorce." There was a brief pause before his reply. "Damn, David. I'm sorry to hear that. I always thought you two had something good. Yeah, so did I said bitterly. But it turns out she's been with someone else, her coworker Travis, for over a year. I'm done playing nice. Alex let out a long sigh. All right, I'll take care of it. Come by tomorrow around lunch to sign the papers, and we'll grab a bite afterward. Good. And one more thing. I lowered my voice, leaning into the moment. I want a restraining order. A restraining order? David, come on, Alex said, chuckling. What's Claire going to do, raid your fridge? She told me, I paused for effect, that if I gave her trouble about the divorce, Travis would come by and straighten me out. Alex laughed outright. David, you're full of it, but fine. I'll file it. Just so you know, there'll be a hearing in 10 days to determine if it sticks. That's fine, I said. I just want her out of the house and out of my hair until then. We don't have kids, so there's no reason for her to stay. I already told her to leave this morning, but there's no telling if she'll actually go. If she's still there tonight, I'm having her served at work. Jesus, David, are you sure this can't be resolved any other way? None, I said firmly. See you tomorrow. I hung up and leaned back in my chair, letting out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Across the table, Mia arched an eyebrow. So, boss, what's the plan for the weekend? Her question pulled me out of my thoughts, and I forced a grin. Let's hear your ideas. When I got home that evening, Claire was right where I expected her, sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes defiant. Why are you still here? I asked, grabbing a beer from the fridge. This is my house too, David, she said sharply. I'll stay until I can make other arrangements. If you don't like my company, feel free to move out. I smirked, popping the cap off the bottle. Not a chance. Sit down. We need to talk. Claire crossed her arms. Fine. Let's talk. There are things we need to figure out. There's nothing to figure out, I said coolly, leaning against the counter. You want a divorce? Great. Hire a lawyer, file the papers, and pay for it yourself. I'll fight you for everything. Every couch, every lamp, every damn spoon. This is going to be the most expensive mistake of your life. Her mouth dropped open. Why are you being like this now? This morning, you barely reacted. You told me to pack my things and leave. Now you're acting like you care about the stupid couch. I stepped closer, locking eyes with her. You want to know why? Fine. Because I've had time to think. You didn't want a divorce the first 3 times you cheated, and I let it slide. I stayed because I thought you were coming back to me out of love, not guilt. Her face froze, but her eyes darted away when I mentioned 3 times. That reaction told me everything I needed to know. You thought I didn't know, didn't you? I continued, my voice rising. I let you off the hook because I loved you. I stayed, even when I suspected you were using me as a safety net between affairs. But not anymore. I see you for what you are, Claire. A lying, cheating opportunist. She flinched, but I wasn't done. And let me tell you something else. If you hadn't brought up leaving for Travis, you'd be spreading your legs for some other guy 6 months from now. That's who you are. Claire jumped to her feet, her chair screeching against the tile. You think I'm the bad? You're no saint, David. You've been checked out of our marriage for years. I laughed bitterly. Oh, spare me the justifications. I should have left you the first time, but I was too blind, or too stupid, to see the truth. I drained my beer and set the empty bottle on the counter. You want to stay? Fine. Move your crap to the guest room and stay the hell away from me. I stormed upstairs without waiting for her response. When I reached the bedroom, my bedroom now, I stood for a moment, gripping the doorframe. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally taking control. The next morning, I woke early and left before Claire even stirred. I went to a cozy cafe for breakfast, sipping my coffee and sketching out a list of people to call once she was served. The story would come from me, not her. I wouldn't let her twist it into something that painted me as the villain. At work, Mia was buzzing with excitement about our weekend plans. Her enthusiasm was contagious, and for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. At lunch, I met Alex and signed the divorce papers. He slid them into a folder and gave me a look. Still want her served at work? Absolutely. Do it at 10 tomorrow. Call me as soon as it's done. After leaving Alex's office, I called a locksmith to change the house locks immediately after Claire was served. I wasn't taking any chances. When I got home that evening, Claire's car was in the driveway, but she stayed out of sight. I took that as a small mercy. The next morning, I waited until she left for work before I started packing her things into boxes. By 10:15, Alex called. It's done. Papers have been served. Perfect, I said, grinning. The locksmith arrived within 20 minutes, and by the time Claire pulled into the driveway, the locks were changed and her belongings were neatly stacked in the garage. A large cardboard sign read, "Claire, all your things are here." I watched from the window as she stood in the driveway, staring at the sign. Her face turned red, and she marched to the front door, fumbling with her keys. When they didn't work, she pounded on the door, ringing the bell furiously. I didn't answer. Eventually, she gave up, snatched a couple of bags from the garage, and sped off. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. "Hello?" I said, knowing exactly who it was. "You're such an asterisk hole," she shouted. "Did you really have to embarrass me at work?" I laughed. "Better than letting you embarrass me at mine." "And this restraining order nonsense?" she demanded. "I was worried Travis might come after me for being rude to you. You know, just being cautious. You're making this so much harder than it needs to be, David," she snapped. "Oh, Claire," I said coldly. "You haven't even seen hard yet." And with that, I hung up, feeling the last threads of our toxic marriage snap for good. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let us know in the comments. The next morning, I went through the house one last time, gathering every scrap of Claire's belongings. When I was done, I dumped the pile in the garage, where it belonged. Then I made myself a sandwich and tried to relax. That's when the AR security team arrived. After everything Claire had pulled, I wasn't taking chances. I knew she wouldn't respect the restraining order. She was impulsive, reckless, and vindictive, traits that made her predictable in the worst ways. By the time they finished installing the security system, I had cameras covering every angle of the house. Whatever she did next, I'd be ready. I didn't have to wait long. Thursday evening, after work, I told Mia, "We're all set for the weekend." She smiled, her excitement radiating. "Tomorrow night, dinner and dancing to start. Sound good?" "Perfect," I said, letting her enthusiasm brighten my mood. When I got home, Claire was there, just as I'd expected. At first, she seemed to play by the rules, taking only a few things from the garage. But then she proved me right. The security camera caught everything. She pried open the connecting door to the kitchen and stormed inside. It was like a scene from a bad soap opera. Plates and glasses smashed onto the floor, shards flying everywhere. Lamps in the living room? Smashed to bits. But the grand finale? She raided my closet, dragging every single piece of clothing into the bedroom and piling it on the floor. Then she squatted over the pile and peed. I wasn't even mad. I sat in my car, watching the live feed on my phone, shaking my head in disbelief. The cameras had captured every second, proof of her complete disregard for the law, not to mention basic human decency. If she thought this was going to hurt me, she was wrong. All she'd done was hand me the perfect evidence for court. I called Alex immediately. "You're not going to believe this," I said, chuckling. He didn't believe me until I sent him the footage. His response was swift. By the time the police arrived, I had a report filed, photos of the damage taken, and my clothes sent off for professional cleaning. Claire was arrested the next day at work, booked for violating the restraining order and destruction of private property. Despite the chaos, I wasn't going to let her ruin my weekend. My date with Mia was everything I needed, a reminder of what life could be like without drama. We had an incredible dinner, danced until midnight, and made plans for Saturday. That night, as I dropped her off, we shared a kiss that left me grinning all the way home. Saturday's date was just as magical, and by Sunday, we were sharing a picnic under the sun, laughing like teenagers. For the first time in years, I felt light, like the weight of my toxic marriage was finally lifting. On Monday, Claire and I faced each other in court for the restraining order hearing. She sat with her arms crossed, glaring at me as if I were the villain in this story. But when the judge reviewed the security footage, her confidence crumbled. The judge didn't hold back. "Mrs. Clare," he said, his voice sharp, "this is some of the most egregious behavior I've seen in my courtroom. Your actions are a clear violation of the restraining order and demonstrate malicious intent. The order will remain in place, permanently." He turned to me next. "Mister, you are entitled to full reimbursement for the damage, the cleaning of your clothes, and the cost of cleaning the bedroom." He gave her 10 days to pay or face jail time for contempt. Feeling vindictive, I hired the most expensive cleaning service in the city. If Claire wanted to play games, she'd pay for them in more ways than one. Unfortunately, she somehow scraped together the money, avoiding jail time. I'd been hoping for that poetic justice, but I took solace in knowing it must have burned her to empty her savings. The following weeks passed in relative peace. Mia and I grew closer, though we kept things platonic for now. The chemistry between us was undeniable, and I knew it was only a matter of time before we took things further. But there was still the lingering shadow of my unfinished divorce. 6 months later, it was over. The divorce was finalized, and I walked away with my house intact. Claire's attempt to bleed me dry had failed spectacularly. I refinanced the house and bought out her share. What she didn't know, and never would, was that I had a hidden savings account she couldn't touch. It had been meant for a surprise anniversary trip, but now it was my safety net. She also had no clue about the certificates of deposit tucked away in the safe, purchased with my last 2 bonus checks. Those were staying right where they were. Claire did win alimony, for 2 years or until she remarried. But the judge, who clearly had no sympathy for her, set it at a laughable $100 a week. Alex told me we'd lucked out with the judges, both of whom had dealt with cheating spouses in their own lives. They followed the law but didn't go beyond what was required. About 7 months after the divorce, I was at the Hilton bar, enjoying a beer and a steak sandwich for lunch. A man slid onto the stool next to me and said, "Mind if I buy you a drink?" I turned, and there he was, Travis, Claire's former lover. "Go ahead," I said, raising an eyebrow. He signaled to the bartender, ordered 2 beers, and took a sip of his. For a moment, he stared at the bottle, peeling the label off in little strips. Then he spoke. "I didn't mean to screw up your life," he said, not meeting my eyes. I let out a bitter laugh. "You didn't. Claire did that all on her own." He nodded, still focused on the label. "I didn't know she was married when I met her. She wasn't wearing a ring, and she definitely wasn't acting like a wife. If I'd known," he trailed off, shaking his head. "You would have done it anyway," I said bluntly. He flinched but didn't argue. Instead, he pulled something out of his pocket and slid it across the counter. Travis took another sip of his beer and glanced at me. "You know," he started, "there were rumors that you knew about the affair the whole time. Why didn't you just divorce her right away?" I shrugged. "Like you said, she was damn good in bed. Plus, she kept the house clean, did the cooking, and handled the laundry. It was convenient. I probably would have stayed in that arrangement indefinitely if she hadn't brought up leaving and wanting a divorce." He nodded thoughtfully and took another drink. "I never thought I'd say this, especially to you, but I miss having her in my bed." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing as he finished his beer. Then he pulled something out of his pocket and slid it across the counter toward me. "What's this?" I asked, staring at the familiar lottery ticket. "It's a winner," he said simply, placing a cashier's check on top of it. "This is your half." I picked up the check, my jaw dropping at the amount. "I waited to give it to you until after the divorce," he said. "Figured you wouldn't want to split it with her. Take care, man." And with that, he stood and walked away, leaving me stunned. When I returned to the office, Jan, my assistant, took one look at me and grinned. "You look like the cat that ate the canary. Was lunch that good?" "Better than good," I replied, smiling. "Oh, right," Jan said, smirking. "Maria doesn't work here anymore, huh?" "Not in the office," I said, my smile growing. "She's home painting the nursery. Gotta get ready for the twins." Dear listeners, what do you think of how things turned out? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.